Hey everybody. Sorry, I got a little something going on. I hope everyone's had a good week and everything. I don't really have any complaints myself, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started. I've really enjoyed. I'm so glad that we got to discuss fat studies because this was something I've discussed in one of my other GWS classes. Um, and we touched on it for I think about a week or so, but it was something that I mentioned in my discussion post is that it's something that you don't really give any kind of consideration to. It's just like you grow up and like especially I feel like at all periods throughout time, but the way that I grew up, it was it was bad to be fat and like it still is, like perceived as bad. Um, but like back in the 2000s, early 2000s, it was so in to be skinny. I think even one other person mentioned in their discussion post, I'm pretty sure they mentioned it, the anorexic chic style that's been in and out of fashion, which is troubling on so many different counts. Um, so back in the 2000s, that's how a lot of women were. They were super thin, and to the point where people started calling Britney Spears fat, and because like her pants were like maybe a little tight because she didn't like you couldn't see her rib cage or anything. It was extremely problematic time period, and so seeing a lot of that stuff like growing up, I don't think I really had that much of a problem with that. I don't think I've ever felt like any sort of discrimination against people who are fat, but a lot of people have. Like just being around like people that I know, like you're gonna know people who might have more weight on them than other people. But it was still, I remember it was still very valued to be like skinny. So um, I'm glad that we got to talk about fat studies because again, it's not something that you really give any kind of consideration to as something that could be a feminist issue. I put in my discussion post that I thought that the discussion of fat studies was very similar to the discussion of critical disability studies, where it can happen to anyone. No one is exempt from gaining any kind of weight. No one is really exempt from losing weight either. It's something that can be genetic, something that you can't help. There are so many different factors at play when it comes to weight gain. So that, I don't think any article really directly mentioned that it was something that could happen to everybody, but I know that one of the critical disability studies articles that we read did mention that disability can happen to anyone, and so can weight gain. So there's no reason to, discriminate against it. The article that most resonated with me was the fat femininities, whoa, article. I thought that covered the most information. I thought that it did a really good job at explaining everything. I'm looking over my notes right now because I really enjoyed the intersection that they discuss when it comes to femininity and being fat. Also, one thing I just remembered, one thing that did strike me from this article was that I really wanted to talk about. Is this good? I'm not sure. Oh, when in the section, let me find it. Finding when they're discussing being femme in like the queer women like culture, they discussed how being femme is looked down on, and that did not make a lot of sense to me. They said that when you are a queer woman and you are presenting as femme, you are playing into the gender norms. And I thought that was really kind of an odd statement because one, if you're, butch, then aren't you also kind of playing into the gender norms of there having to be a man and there having to be a woman? And I thought that it was in a way kind of oppressive, to be like, well, you can't be femme, everyone has to be butch. I don't think that's exactly what they were saying, but that's just kind of the impression that I got. And so I think it's funny that even among women in a culture, where women are sexually attracted to other women, there's still an oppression of being a woman. Like, I thought that was so crazy that they just thought that it was wrong. Okay, I have written here, butch and femme identities marginalized by feminists and lesbians for the replication of standard gender norms. Don't they both do that, though? Doesn't that kind of go hand in hand? Femmes more so for colluding with the patriarchy due to their attachments of femininity. What about the masculine presenting side of it? I might be misunderstanding something. I might just not be getting it. But that's kind of what I thought. I might be wrong. Like, I might just not understand what it's saying. The article went on to say that femmes are still, like now, or at least the time of this article, which was, I can't see, I think 2023. Whoops. Sorry. Said that they're still perceived as undesirable and an inferior identity in contemporary queer cultures. How can we have moved so far to the LGBTQ plus culture accepting so many different forms of identity that were not really thought of, were not really accepted, like 40 years ago, and yet being femme is bad? I don't get that. So I think that's what this article went back into talking about, was the femmephobia. Refers to the systemic devaluation of femininity as well as the regulation of patriarchal femininity. Now, I do understand the patriarchal femininity stuff. That is like a whole problem in and of itself. The upholding of a patriarchal femininity, that I can see is problematic. Like wearing the dresses, staying at home, doing the cooking, cleaning, whatever. Also, women have a right to do whatever they want. If that's what they want to do, I don't guess I can really say that I blame them. However, if that was what all femmes were doing, I keep doing that, I don't know why. If that was what all femmes were doing within queer women culture, then I could begin to see the problem. But I don't think that's what it is. I think it's just not presenting as masculine, right? Am I wrong? Anyways, so femmephobia was a whole topic of discussion. Sorry, I got kind of on a tangent about that. It had nothing to do with the fat studies. But going back into the fat studies, women being seen as people who need to take up as little space as possible. This is why it's a feminist issue, because it is so different when it comes to men who are fat than women who are fat. Men are supposed to be loud. Men are supposed to take up space. They're supposed to be seen. But women are only supposed to be seen by those men who want them. So it's a whole shallow kind of idea that it just comes down to being wanted. That was something that some people in the discussion post talked about, was the male gaze, which is definitely this. If you look into social media and you look at the male gaze, it's always about looks. But if you look at the female gaze, it's less like that. And a lot of the times when someone says, like, someone is written by a woman, it goes beyond physical characteristics. So I think that's what it all boils down to within fat studies. Okay, I'm over my time. Hopefully this kind of made sense. If anyone has any questions, if anyone wants to clear anything up for me, more than welcome. Thank you.